What is up, guys, and welcome back to the channel. I am heading over to the main shop because that is where Nick has been working on the C6 Corvette, and today I have so many good updates for you guys. Every big thing that we accomplish on that car is huge because a lot of this stuff hasn't been done before, and Nick has been absolutely amazing holding that build down. And yes, to all the comments that keep just commenting about Taylor Ray, bro, send me a video of the issues that we were having that he's already figured out. That would help us, okay? I know Taylor, I have no problem with him. It's just like the comments get so frustrating because no one is as far along in this build as we are, at least no one on YouTube. So we're figuring out a lot of stuff on our own. And yes, I've even like been sending Taylor some of our measurements that we're taking. So yes, I know he's building it. No, there's no really videos that I can reference at this point, which is a big reason why I'm creating them and wanting to document this process, because we're definitely learning a lot the further we get into the build. But today I do have some very, very good updates for you guys. So I'm gonna head over to the main LZ shop. Nick has been working out of there just because it's easier to weld. They have the whole like welding corner already set up until we get one set up in my shop. So let's go check it out. All right, Nick's here, and we have some amazing Corvette updates for you guys. There's a lot of updates that need to be talked about since the last kind of rundown of where the Corvette was at. I would say some of the most exciting news is that, look at this. Look at that right there. The transmission is fully mounted. And look, this is all we had to cut. Actually, you didn't make any additional cuts since the last time it was being mocked up.
I need to widen this one a little bit and widen that one just a little bit, just to have a little bit of extra clearance, but for the most part.
There was a tiny cut.
Yeah.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, so.
But this is huge.
Yeah, no, this was the biggest hurdle that we had to get through in order to make sure that this was all gonna work, you know? And yeah, the mount is pretty simple. It's not anything too crazy. I didn't know from like the get-go that this is all a fully steel like trans tunnel. It was just easier in order to actually mount it properly and not be like concerned like
that this was fiberglass.
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
like most of the Corvette is fiberglass, but luckily this was not.
Exactly. So that was a concern initially, but it's a pretty structural part of the car, so mounting the transmission to this is not necessarily a big concern. So. And
that's why it was also important for us to just not hack it up, right? Because like so much of a Corvette is fiberglass, and this is a big structural part too, so we wanted to really just cut as little as possible, and it's in there now. So that is pretty huge. And this is at what angle did you say? It was like the ideal LS angle?
It's basically like at about 0.5 degrees slanted down. You don't want the engine fully set at 0 degrees. You want a slight slope down, which we're able to achieve with how the transmission mounted and everything like that. So
when the car's in the air, I can show you guys the actual like mount and bracket that he made. One more thing on how our transmission is mounted and just the general setup for the inside here. Yes, I know we had to cut fresh paint. You're not going to see that. You're not going to see the raw cuts because Nick is going to be making a plate, and then on top of that plate that I'm going to paint before he puts it on, we have our fire shift boot.
So it'll basically sit like this, and this will keep it so none of the debris or anything can come through. And like she said, this is all going to be plated over.
We're just going to rivet it on because it doesn't really need to be removed. I know initially we were like, oh, maybe a quick release one, but
no, luckily like this boot's all removable. So if we need to like for whatever reason pull this part of the shifter apart, we can just pull the boot off and get to it.
So now we are just waiting on our winters to arrive, the one that's actually meant for this car. Our drive shaft and axles will be done this week, so we'll probably be getting them Monday or Tuesday of next week, so then we can throw those on. Let's see, what else has been going on?
So I got the headers fitted. They're not completely modified to actually fit quite yet, but they are bolted onto the engine and sitting in there.
You can see where I had my little fire in the previous version of the Corvette where the clutch line caught on fire, but that's fine.
We're gonna clean clean all that up later on so we don't reminisce about that.
Wait, so you have this side on too?
Yep, that side's on.
Oh.
That side I didn't have to cut at all to actually bolt onto the engine. That side I actually had to physically cut a piece off of it to actually get it mounted onto the engine.
Okay.
But both sides are going to have to be modified to fit around the transmission basically.
And that's the next like tricky part.
Yeah.
Like I would say.
Yeah. But yeah, for the most part, that's definitely going to be the more tricky side, is getting the full exhaust on the car past the transmission and all that.
And we gotta use some oval.
Yep, so
oval tubing.
Some oval piping to kind of just sneak past the transmission. And you'll see once we lift it up, you'll see how tight of a clearance it is under there. It's definitely a little tricky.
These are looking nice.
Yep, so that's our
mounted.
coil mounts from Texas Speed. We got those all mounted. Have the majority of the wires already made. Any other kind of hidden out of the way. They're not going to be next to the heat or anything. So
very
nice.
nice.
Should be in good spots.
And then today we are going to be working on the steering column,
yep.
seats, and hopefully if our pedals show up, I got the Tilton 600 series floor mount pedals for the car. If those show up, we'll also put those in the car as well. But first, he's going to be working on this. So this is the Fdf Universal Steering Kit. And how you have to weld this, right? Like how are you actually customizing this?
So basically this is the stock joint that goes onto the steering rack. We got pretty lucky. I cut the steering shaft in half, and the inside diameter actually fits perfectly over the tubing that's already there.
Oh.
So that's great. So we'll basically sleeve this, weld this across, and then from here, from the steering column basically to this joint, and then this joint will then connect to the steering wheel up here. So we're gonna have to cut all these pipes and stuff like that in order to make it be in the right position.
And you're welding that side too?
Yep, so these will need to also be welded to each side of the pipes there.
So the kit just comes with these like as general measurements, and then you're just like cutting to size basically. Because this isn't made for a Corvette.
This is a universal kit. So this as well will need to be welded to this tube as well.
Weird, I just got deja vu and I do not know why. I don't know.
Oh, weird.
That's weird.
Then this will go in the firewall itself. I made this little plate. We'll basically be bolting this into the firewall, and that'll also hold the steering shaft in place. And this will bolt onto the dash bar, which will also go through the steering shaft. So it'll be supported in 2 different points, and it'll be supported off of, the factory rack.
And luckily, Corvette, it's a lot more simple than your S chassis, right? Because this is just straight shot through.
Yeah,
you can see the hole and just boom.
Yeah,
right
with it being a front-mounted rack, it gives you a lot more space to get to it.
So yeah, shout out FDF. We're gonna start working on this and hopefully get to the seat and pedals later on too. Here's the view from under the car. Look at that. Look at that nice mount. Got a bushing and everything.
It's pretty simple for the most part. It's nothing too complicated or crazy.
Yeah.
It's basically just 3/16 steel that I bent and of course made fit in between the trans tunnel here. I welded nuts onto this side, so basically the bolts go through the trans tunnel, through that other 3/16 plate, and then mount to this 3/16 trans mount here.
So nice.
Yeah.
And now our GSR is officially a part of the car. So that is really, really good news. That was a huge hurdle to get over. And like I said, we're waiting on our rear end and all of our custom axles and drive shaft. Oh, and he also finished welding our subframe here, just reinforcing where it had to be cut because the diff had to sit a lot lower than we originally thought it had to. And even with it being that much lower, it still has a massive angle. So in the last Corvette update video, we told you how we're having to use special CV style joints on the drive shaft. That drive shaft shop is making for us because we're running at like, what, an 8-degree angle in the drive shaft, which on a normal drive shaft would not be good. It's not ideal, but because we're gonna have those special CV style joints, we're gonna make it work. And drive shaft shop is like way over building our drive shaft so that we shouldn't have any issues. I will say though, while we were talking about the rear setup with those RTS brackets, I know I was talking about them a lot in previous videos, and honestly, if you guys are doing a front mount GSR G4 setup, I would not recommend those brackets. It is running, like we said, at that really high angle. It's about 4 inches higher in the rear than the front, and it's just not ideal. Like even now, we're gonna be testing it with that angle in a drifting application. So really, if you guys are trying to do a front mount, I would reach out to Fdf. He, in the past like a week, has completely engineered brackets that will go into the rear subframe.
Pretty similar in modification to this. You have to, you know, kind of clearance it to make the diff sit a little bit lower. But
I think you have to cut out more too, but he made like a jig when he was making these brackets so that it'll be...
It's a fully reinforced bracket. So basically you do have to modify the subframe, but you don't have to like try to strengthen it again. The brackets that he has already re-strengthens it.
So you just need to cut, and then his kit comes with all the brackets that you need to put on your subframe, and his kit allows the Winters diff to be run the correct way. So if you remember with our RTS brackets, the diff actually has to be run upside down, and to do that you need to send your diff off to Winters. They have to machine it and completely rebuild it, so it's just a very complicated process, and FDF figured out how to make brackets for a front mount setup that does not require any of those other modifications, and it gets the drive shaft angle a lot better. I think it's within like ½ an inch to an inch. He's currently developing this, so just wanted to mention it because I was pushing, you know, the RTS brackets, or just talking about them a lot, and going backwards, I would not have gotten those brackets, and I would get the FDF ones if I could redo it again. But we're in it. We are very far into it now. Our Winters is already modified, and luckily Drive Shaft Shop is making us that custom stuff to make it work. So just wanted to mention that because I feel like I was kind of promoting this setup when in reality I would probably go back and use the FDF stuff. I knew you did that. Don't you be driving recklessly.
Come on.
I know in your head you just did like a crazy drift.
I like did a great like final stop, and then I like ended like this.
Okay, anyway, we are gonna go search for a seat and seat brackets and my new pedals that should have arrived by now. I think Nick already has the steering column mocked up, so we're gonna put everything in there so then we can get myself in there to see how I want to be positioned and how everything fits. All right, we found my seat, an old bracket from before, and here is our Tilton pedal set. This is their 600 series, and we don't have our master's size just yet, but we still should be able to get our measurements and figure out how we're going to mount this today. And this is another HDK piece. This is their universal foot tray. A big problem that I usually have, especially with floor mount pedals, is that my foot is just a lot smaller and I'm too low on the pedal. So when we put these back there, I'll kind of show you what I mean. But this tray should raise my heels up enough so that I'm at a much better position on the actual pedal. So we're gonna start putting stuff in the car, get myself in there, and work on setting everything up. Nick already has the steering column mocked up with our wheel in here. So really, we just need to see kind of how far back we can get me, where we want to put the pedals, and then finalize everything. Along with our floor mount pedals, we also have our remote reservoir, which this one's really nice. It has all 3 integrated into one piece. So here we go. So that'll look very nice. It'll probably be mounted just on the passenger side, maybe even underneath the dash, if we can get away with hiding it and still having it high enough. Some people don't like floor mounted pedals. I don't mind them. I had them in the car that I raced rallycross like years ago, and as long as I have like a foot tray or some sort of foot riser, I'm fine. If you guys remember, we are doing a conversion to drive by cable, so we'll have another linkage that we need to put on here for the actual cable. But look, if my foot is right here, the pedal part on the top is already as low as it can go. And if you look at my foot, like the tip of my toe is sort of in the middle of this pad. And that is just, that's awful from like a driver feel perspective. You don't want to be like on your tiptoe trying to press pedals. So that is always the issue that I end up having with small feet. So as long as I can raise myself up, that puts the pedal in a much better position to be like on the ball of my foot all around. So I'm hoping that is what this will do. And it's just a bonus that this is pretty as well. So with this here, my foot should be in a much better position. Let's see. Boom. If anything, my foot is a little high now because I had this as low as it can go. So I'll probably move all these up one, and then it should be in a much better position. You get two options. I had it on the highest one so that it would be as low as possible, and I'm just gonna move it to the second one, and hopefully that height is like perfect and lands right around like the ball of my foot. It's really hard for me to judge where I want the placement of everything without the dash. So we ran over, got our HDK carbon dash. It's not going to be perfectly mocked up in there, but putting that in will give me a much better like visual point to then solidify everything else. Nick is cutting the dash to make room for our column bracket to come through and just the column in general. So while he's doing that, let me tell you about one thing we're going to have to change with our GSR setup. So initially when I spec'd out the GSR, I didn't know that we'd be doing floor mount pedals, and I thought I'd be having to work with the stock ones again, which in order for me to reach where the stock pedals are, I have to be like way forward, like way up on the wheel. So I got the shifter location to be further forward so that I'm not reaching like far back like I usually have to in most cars that I'm trying to get fitted in. Now that we have the floor mount pedals, I actually need to sit further back, which is better for weight balancing, and I'd rather be further back as a driver anyway. But now that I'm in position that's good with the floor pedals and my seat, the shifter now is too far away. Like I'm reaching, my arm is fully extended, and that is not good. So the GSR transmission comes with 3 different options for the lawn shifter placement. There's a 21, a 24, and a 26. So this is a 24, and this is where it ends up coming out to. I just called them, and they're gonna be overnighting us the 26 version, and that'll get this shifter location 2 inches closer towards me. They do their measurements by like the front face of the transmission to where the shifter ends up coming out when it's in neutral. It's just because now I can actually sit in a much better position. So now I need the shifter closer to me. And then if that's not close enough to me, we can then modify the shifter and make it like reach back towards me. Worst case if I need it. So that is one thing we're going to have to change. But luckily we can just swap this whole bracket piece that is on top of the transmission. We can swap it out. I'm trying to show you a little better. There it is. We can swap this bracket that goes to the shifter with a new one that comes in tomorrow, and that'll fix that issue. For most other people, this wouldn't be a problem. I just am short, I have short feet, I have short arms, and now this is really hard for me to reach. But if you're curious where the 24-inch output ends up, It's right here. Yep, Florida is back to being Florida and raining all the time. The winter was great while it lasted. Do you hear this? Yep, that is Florida saying I'm back, baby. Okay, the rain has kind of calmed down, so let's start with our steering column and our dash situation. So because the FDF bracket and like all steering column brackets go to the cage right here, because of the height of our cage, the bracket is sitting too high to let the dash go fully down like it needs to. It really needs to go probably another inch down to be sitting where it's supposed to on this side. On that side it's completely fine because it's not hitting anything, but on this side it needs to go lower, and we already cut out the area in here that was meant to be cut out, and I do not want to hack up this beautiful carbon fiber dash. So what we are going to have to do is make kind of like a drop down hoop for the FDF kit to grab onto. It's going to lower this down, and then this will also be at a better angle with this bracket lower as well. So that has been added to the list. So we aren't going to be able to finalize our steering setup at the moment, but we have a game plan. Nick can make that like drop down hoop tomorrow, then we can get this realigned and finalize all the positioning. But it is mocked up, it's just not fully welded here or at the bottom there, and it's not cut yet. But with how it is now, we can still get a really good idea of where we want this to end up. Spending probably an hour just trying to get a feel for where I want everything in the seat. This is where I believe this is going to end up. So lowering that mounting point won't change this part of it. It's just going to make our dash fit better, and then have, honestly, this angle be better as well with it being mounted lower. I told you guys about the shifter, so I have a new one coming in that's going to put this about 2 inches further back, which should be good. And worst case, if I need it back a little bit more, you can get a shifter piece that comes up from the transmission and is bent back. We had to put a pause on this and then making the cover for this. We don't want to end up doing it twice, so we're just waiting until we have the correct shifter to make the panel that will be going over all of this, and that this will be fully mounted to. So pause on that situation, but I do have the new part that should be showing up tomorrow, so we got a game plan. And now let's move on to our floor mount Tilton pedals. So these pedals, honestly, where it feels the most comfortable, it's really pushing it in terms of leaving space for the master behind them, because with this set, the masters are actually pointing towards the firewall, and they're supposed to be mounted on the back of this pedal set. My seat is already pretty much as far back as we would want it, and I think I'm gonna want the pedals slightly farther back, and we're gonna really be pushing it with where everything is lining up now. Like, I want my leg to be flat on the seat here. You don't really want it hanging in the air. That's way too much of a bend in the ledge. So we put a pause on fully mounting the pedals down, and I actually overnighted some that's the same like Tilton 600 series, but it has the masters being mounted towards you. So it's gonna go underneath our universal foot tray, there's plenty of room to put them underneath this thing, and this is actually the use case that most people would use this tray for. So it's going to take this same setup and just have the masters going towards you so that you don't have to worry about clearance away from the firewall. And then that will allow me to push the pedals as far forward as we want, really, and finalize a mounting solution for them then. I think that's just a better game plan going forward. I really want to make sure that I'm comfortable in this car. This is really the first time that I am fully 100% able to build a car completely around me. Like, I never fit into cars ever. I'm always compromising. So now that we can actually build it right specifically for me, I want to do that. So it's unfortunate when you're doing a build that's so customized like this and then you end up realizing that you bought like the wrong parts, but we're all learning this as we go. And that's another thing we're gonna put a pause on and wait until I get the other pedal set to compare to for tomorrow, then make our decision and fully mount the pedals. So yeah, we kind of hit multiple roadblocks today. Every roadblock that we hit, it's really just us learning from and making the adjustments as you go. With builds this customized, that's just part of the process, and I'm trying to film more for you guys and take you along for the good, the bad, and everything that's happening and everything that we are learning, honestly. And this is it. This is part of the process. All in all, it's still been a super productive day. We have a game plan and should have all of our new parts in tomorrow. And it's really motivating for me just seeing parts slowly being added into the car. Like, it's starting to look like a real race car again. We got our seat in there. We know what we gotta do to fix our dash, but man, look at it, you guys. It is slowly but surely coming together. Let me know in the comments below if you guys like these more in-depth, day-to-day detailed videos. I'm just trying to bring you guys along for the journey. We are learning a ton, and just me personally knowing that there are many other people trying to tackle a very similar build on the Corvette chassis, it also makes me motivated to just share what we are learning so that everyone can grow and figure things out together. But let me know if you guys like this more long-form detailed content in the comments below. That is it for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.